Listen, I'm from ALUS Canada. The acronym stands for Alternative Land Use Services, and the program was originally entitled a Farmer's Conservation Plan. The acronym means a farmer shall use his land in an alternate way and produce a service, an ecosystem service that they should be rewarded for, quite frankly, to be paid for production of that ecosystem service. I'm here to bring the program into this, the wetland mitigation policy conversation by trying to make the case for you that we can more fully implement the wetland policy in Alberta if we consider the communities and the community members at the forefront of wetland policy and delivery. I am a real live cattle raiser. My claim to fame is I was the third participant producer in ALUS 13 years ago. So I very much grew up with this program as a participant first. ALUS itself, it's the umbrella organization that now houses relationships with 25 community partners across Canada in 6 provinces. 13 of those are here in Alberta, which are all integrated into municipal structures here in Alberta. So we manage this system by creating MOUs with all these organizations. And our bright idea is simply this, that we can ask the producers on the landscape to produce more than just food and fiber for us, but they can also produce cleaner air, cleaner water, more biodiversity, in this particular instance, maybe more wetland mitigation for all of us. That we can expand the role in what, in fact, emanates from our farm and ranch land here in Canada. And the program begins with a really simple concept that let's engage with the power of one. Let's engage with that one individual on the land and worry about that one individual and what we can get out of that person, and then leverage outwards. And the way we do that is by working through what we call partnership advisory committees. This is the Partnership Advisory Committee from Vermilion County. This committee is tasked with governing the operations of the program inside Vermilion River. So it's a really simple concept in that ALUS attempts to develop, to hand to a community a model, money, GIS and databases and things like that, but ultimately the community is given power to make those decisions on the landscape that are most appropriate for that community. Now this is our mission statement, and I think there's a lot in this statement in that this speaks to a question of balance, right? We're sustaining agriculture and wild spaces, not one or the other. It's not to the exclusion of each other. But it's a question of finding common interests between the municipalities or the urban centers and the people on the landscape if we want to effectively wrestle with our environmental issues. I mentioned earlier in Alberta, we now are at 13 community partners, and we've affected about 9,000 acres of land, so we're getting some momentum here, making some real change on the landscape. We believe in ecosystem services that natural capital, the woodlands and the wetlands, offer something to us, flows of ecosystem services that provide benefits to us, right? Like a wetland can filter water, for instance. So that's fundamentally what we think we're producing on the farmland is these ecosystem flows that benefit Canadians. I always like to refer back, because we are in the conservation business, I would like to refer back to the definition of conservation, which is commonly thought of as protection. But if you look at the definition in there, there's allowance for restoration and enhancement and that sort of thing. So I believe that we're in the production conservation business. That is, we'll make more. Our producers, our farmers and ranchers can make more as we consume the natural environment, and that's how we try and position the people on the land. So the immediate problem today here in Alberta that the wetland mitigation policy attempts to address is the loss of wetlands. We're all familiar with this. But none of us are willing to give up the economic activity that goes with it, right? We want to continue our economic well-being and our growth. So there's a question of balance. How do we get there? This is how our program attempts to tackle some problems. And I just want to point out this little wetland that's farmed right down to the edge. But essentially a community meets, right? A community meets with this landowner to try and decide how we can make this situation better here. And a plan is hatched, right? How we're going to tackle this particular problem. And the landowner acts. The landowner acts because the landowner has skills and abilities and tools to help us in conservation. In this case, loading the seeder and spreading the seed, to create this sort of a scene, where the wetland function on this particular site has been tremendously enhanced by adding the grass buffers around it. So the filtration zones are bigger, the area that we can capture water, the sink effect is bigger, everything just works bigger and better. Or this particular site on the Tomahawk Ranch in Parkland County, this is a relatively simple project, but what's occurring here through our activities is that we've slowed the water and we've increased the filtration effect and the seep function that occurs on this little slough here. Now that means that even though this looks like a minor project, we're getting wetland function from that. We're getting cleaner water. We're slowing down the water as it rolls down. And this is sort of the ultimate expression. I'm sorry this slide didn't show up well. This is in northern Sunrise County. This is a combination of a ditch plug wetland restoration together with 17 acres of forest enhancement around it. So you see the combination of things. You can do enhancement. You can do enhancement with restoration, ditch plug restoration, and all of this is additive to the wetland function that we're seeking. So wetlands are sponges, right? They help provide resilience and flood management. Wetlands are filters. We filter water, and wetlands are sinks. The wetlands sink carbon, each and every one of them, if that's your interest. The Insurance Bureau of Canada has gone so far as to declare our work as part of Canada's important natural infrastructure. That's a new concept, and that is we don't need to always build infrastructure with concrete and steel, that we can create it out of dirt and plants, and that's something that we do very well at ALUS, and we do it upstream of communities, and this recognition is important to us. We've plowed completely into this space by sponsoring or being one of a pretty big partnership on the Modeste watershed to model the implications or the effects of our work so that decision makers can understand what it means. In other words, if I look at the model and I put a wetland here, what benefits will I experience, right? If I'm a municipal water manager, for instance. These are the partners that are involved in this program, but it essentially is a computer model on an IMWeb's platform that will turn into software that decision makers can use to make real sound financial decisions on what our programming can offer. Now, that's important because if you're allowing your wetland mitigation money to leave your community, you aren't experiencing the value that we know is being created. And the IMWeb's platform will help us get at that value. And we will be able to speak to the fact that there is then return on investment by keeping that money at home and expressing it in every way possible to increase wetland function, especially if we do it as a community. So that's a really important concept to understand, that this is a double payback. The money just isn't leaving our communities. The wetland isn't leaving our communities, but the function and the dollars and the activity stays home, and that's really important. So it benefits you where the mitigation need is. So all that is to say is we really believe that communities sit at the center or at the forefront of this conversation about how Alberta can more fully express the mitigation dollars and the flow of dollars by considering a broader range of activities other than just a pure ditch plug restoration. That we can be thinking broader about wetland ecosystem service or function and replacing that and getting ourselves to the same finishing line. Now, what essentially we're doing here is we're finding value in nature the old-fashioned way. By value, I mean the type of value that jingles. I was taught years ago in business school that if it doesn't jingle, it doesn't count. So if our decision makers at the municipal level begin to get a broader understanding of this, the dollar value of the natural infrastructure, and the dollar value of wetlands, we can make better decisions and we can deploy our community members to better results. And that looks like this. This is a creative expression of problem solving on the landscape. This is a scene, I think, in Parkland County, where the community meets again to discuss creative solutions to the problems that community faces. And it gets bigger than that. It allows us to think culturally that we're in this together, right? That all these things matter and we value each other in a community and we've bridged that gap. So that's the concept. Our organization is willing to, we put some resources in to help our community partners take a lead on this and to put forward some creative solutions as far as wetland mitigation policy. And we aren't the only ones. There's lots of conservation organizations that will benefit from this, but I know that this is how we're going to position ourselves. To that end, I wanted you to just land on this point that we think what we're doing is the next generation of conservation, and that is we're putting farmers, ranchers, and the communities that they live in at the forefront as solution providers for many of the environmental problems that we face. So if you want any more information about ALUS, this is our website, alus.ca. I'm pleased to announce that Rhonda King has recently joined our organization as the ALUS Canada Western Lead. She will be the go-to person for us on leading on these files on behalf of our community partners and see if we can come up with more productive solutions for wetland mitigation here in Alberta. Thank you for your time.